Hey, how's it going? About a month ago, I picked up a PSA Dagger from their website for dirt cheap. I got a populated slide assembly with a threaded barrel and an RMR cut for $200, as well as a compact frame for $60. $260 for an optics and suppressor-ready Gen 3 Glock clone is really good. Since my 9mm suppressor was approved, I've been looking for a budget suppressor host handgun and couldn't pass up the price on the Dagger. I also managed to get the slide in flat dark earth, which makes my autism, OCD, or both in my brain really happy. I'm gonna go over my first impressions of this gun after 400 rounds, most of which were suppressed, what I like and what I don't like, and some details about the gun. Basic overview of this slide is that it's made from stainless steel and Cerakoted. The barrel is also stainless, and with a DLC coating. Ooh. This is the compact slide and frame, which is Glock 19 sized. Since the barrel is threaded, it's 4.5 inches instead of the usual 4 inches. And it's a Gen 3 Glock clone. Aside from the slide milling, optics cut, and threaded barrel, this is basically just a Glock. Boring, but boringly dependable. This is the SW3 variant of the slide. PSA sells a shitload of different slide variants depending on what you like. I got the SW3 because it was cheap, Lamau. That being said though, I do like the large ports in the slide despite there being no ports in the barrel to match. It looks cool and gives you something to grip in lieu of forward slide serrations. Onto the grip actually feels pretty good. I have medium-sized hands and the finger groove lines up pretty well with how my fingers sit with a firing grip. I've heard some people complain about the finger groove and how they remove it with a belt sander, but it's fine for me. If you wear medium-sized gloves, you'll probably like it too. The texture is also pretty good. Not too aggressive, but gives you enough purchase. There is this weird cutout in the bottom of the magwell that confuses me, but I don't really care that it's here. I can still reload quick despite this weird geometry. My best guess is PSA knew how horrifically dogshit their magazine release was from the factory and wanted to give you a cut in the frame so you can strip the empty magazines out by hand. Speaking of that mag release, spoiler alert, the factory magazine release sucks sweaty donkey balls, dude. It's rectangular and untextured, which wouldn't be a huge deal if the magazine release wasn't stiffer than me walking into a femboy convention. I wrote that line and couldn't get it out with a straight face. It was a strenuous activity to press it with the pad of my thumb like I usually do. I had to break my firing grip and use a joint to have enough force to consistently drop the magazine. Even the dude at my FFL, while I was filling out my 4473, commented on how insanely stiff it was, giggity. Luckily though, since this is a Gen 3 Glock clone, we have access to the massive aftermarket the Glock platform has. I've replaced the magazine release with a Strike Industries extended one, which is pretty nice. It was about $25, and I think a budget part like this fits perfectly on a budget gun. I also replaced the spring with an OEM Glock magazine release spring, and immediately the force required decreased by about 25%. That being said, that's the only part I really feel the need to replace on this gun, and I will likely leave everything else stock for the remainder of the review process. Onto the slide release. The slide release is pretty much the same on a Glock. Been a while since I've shot one, so I can't remember if an OEM Glock slide release is polymer or metal, but this one is metal, and it releases a slide. Crazy. The grip shape allows me to press the slide release without an extension, which is pretty cool. The grip shape on a normal Glock makes me break my firing grip to hit the slide release. Onto the barrel. The barrel is 4.5 inches, threaded half by 28, and is made from DLC coated stainless steel. DLC stands for diamond light coating. No clue why they call it that. I don't really care. Does it prevent corrosion, and does it work? Yes to both. Cool. It's been exhibiting similar wear patterns for me as nitride, so who really cares? It's a black finish, and it works. Onto the sights. The sights that came from the factory are Ameriglow Laurel 1/3 sights, which is a nice touch. I know that a lot of people buy these to replace their factory Glock sights. I painted the front sight white for better contrast when used in light. Despite these being pretty high sights, they only just fucking barely clear my suppressor. And even then, it's only like the top millimeter of the front post. This is fine during the day, partially due to that white paint I mentioned, but at night, it's nearly impossible to get a good sight picture.
Just to show you how fucked it is, let's put that on permanent. Look at that. That's my sight. Tiny little nipple.
Aside from that, the front sight loosened after 250 rounds. Not a huge deal for me, since you can get a Glock front sight tool on Amazon for $6, but I feel that it needs mentioning. Now, will I replace these sights in favor of suppressor height sights? Probably not. These are fine for unsuppressed use, and if I'm spending the money on an upgrade, I'd rather just get a red dot, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing to this gun, thanks to the RMR cut slide. The trigger on this is interesting. It has a hinged trigger safety design like a Smith & Wesson M&P, not a trigger blade safety design like a Glock. It works though, and I've never had an issue with the safety not being disengaged when trying to pull the trigger. Some people hate it, some people love it, I just can't bring myself to give a shit. The pull feels similar to a Glock trigger, at least to me. Some say it's identical to a Glock trigger, some say it's way different. I say who gives a shit and just shoot the fucking gun. I can appreciate a nice striker-fired trigger like the one on the Walther PDP, but I really have a hard time giving a shit about pistol triggers. Chances are the trigger isn't the part holding you back from shooting the gun well, more so a lack of dry fire. The trigger is creepy and has a mediocre break, but that's par for the course. For me, the biggest factor of consideration for a carry gun is reliability. If the gun isn't reliable, you might as well not even carry the damn thing. Thankfully, unsuppressed, the Dagger has been 100% reliable, at least with an OEM Glock 15 round magazine and a Magpul 17 rounder. With extended mags and suppressed, it has had a few hiccups though. At first, when running suppressed with my Canon long or short configuration, the gun would not get through more than a few rounds at a time without a malfunction.
Subsonics. That seemed to cycle. It did not. It did not cycle. Very interesting failure to feed. Tight. Trying to escape the gas. Mouth.
After breaking in for about 200 rounds live fire and 800 cycles of dry fire, it runs nearly flawlessly both suppressed and unsuppressed. Even though it still has difficulty with Magpul 27 rounders, with Amend 33 rounders, ETS 31 rounders, and Glock 31 rounders, it's run flawlessly after the break-in. So for you hood rats that like to carry guns with quote-unquote stiffy clips, you'll be pleased as you raid your local target. As far as ammo goes, I've only used Cellier and Belot 124 grain full metal jackets, SNB, CCI 147 grain subsonics, and SIG V Crown 124 grain hollow points, and all have run well. Now that the gun runs reliably after that break-in period, how is it suppressed? I have about 300 rounds suppressed through it, and it has some quirks. For one, it spits unburnt powder back in your face, which really sucks if you aren't wearing eye pro, which you should be anyway when shooting, but no judgment, I don't all the time either. Even when wearing eye pro, it can cause you to flinch as you get peppered with shit on your nose and mouth. Not great, but the cool factor and hearing safety offered by shooting suppressed is worth it. Aside from that, the short recoil operating system offers quieter shots when compared to a blowback. You can also use your thumb to block the slide from reciprocating for an even quieter shot. So quiet, in fact, that even my sensitive ears can handle hearing 124 grain supers without hearing protection.
See if that actually does it. That worked. Okay. Sights. That should be pretty quiet. I'm gonna take off my ear pro. What do we get? That is comfortable. I can't see the goddamn sights.
When shooting more than a mag or two, you should wear ear pro anyway, but I still think it's pretty cool. Another thing just to note is that Rugged recommends lubricating their piston assembly with white lithium grease for best reliability when used on a Browning action pistol. I tried that, and it helped, but the grease burned off after 20 rounds, so not sure how realistic it is to do that all the time. For a defensive situation where you're probably not going to be shooting more than 20 rounds anyway, I can understand that, but for range use, yikes. I'm also not sure how great it is to breathe in lithium fumes produced by the grease burning, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up my first impressions on the Dagger. Gonna run this through my 2500 round review process, so I'll report back in a while when I get that done. Overall, I like the gun quite a lot, but they really need to solve that magazine release issue. Sample size of 1, but holy shit, that thing is way too stiff. But really, it doesn't matter what handgun you're using, if you don't train. Stop arguing online about which trigger is the best, and go to the fucking range. Live fire and dry fire, drink water, and treat yourself. Take care.